Welcome to the CBIA BizCast powered by Google. I'm Amanda Marlow. Healthcare is a top-of-mind issue for Connecticut businesses and an important topic this legislative session. A key bill that addresses rising costs of employee benefits is one that allows for the creation of association health plans. It did receive support from the Insurance and Real Estate Committee, but failed to advance out of appropriations this week. CBIA Policy Director Grace Brangwynne has been working on this bill. Grace, tell us a little bit about what this will do for businesses.
Sure. Association health plans allow small businesses to pool their risk and purchase health insurance through a sponsoring association like a trade association or a local chamber of commerce.
And talk to me a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, so on Monday night, the bill went to the Appropriations Committee for a vote where unfortunately it was defeated. And this really was a devastating loss for the business community because a lot of small businesses wanted association health plans to help drive down healthcare costs.
And this bill would have allowed for the creation of association health plans, something other states are seeing a lot of success with, but isn't allowed right now under Connecticut law.
That's correct. And the states that do have association health plans, the cost savings are really between 15 and 20%. So we have seen demonstrated success in other states who have legalized this proposal.
There seemed to be a strong amount of support going in. What happened?
You know, if you look at the makeup of the Appropriations Committee in this session versus when in 2023, a few years ago, we really saw an uphill battle and we saw a lot more folks who were going to be opposed to this. So we kind of knew that going into it, but ultimately the outcome was very disappointing.
Was there misinformation as we saw a few years ago?
I think so. And a lot of the narratives from 2023 and 2024 still persist. The comments about discriminating against those with pre-existing conditions, about not keeping plans solvent, those narratives have persisted in the last few years, and they have been hard to shake, no matter what we've done.
What are small business owners doing? Are they offering the insurance and just paying the higher premiums? Are they not able to anymore? What are you seeing?
Small business owners are really in a tough spot. It's kind of between a rock and a hard place. We're hearing from many of them that they're just dropping healthcare entirely because premiums are just entirely too unaffordable, even in the fully insured market. So it's kind of a lose-lose. You offer health insurance and the premiums are too high, which means the costs are passed on to employees, or you just drop healthcare entirely. So you can't really recruit and retain your workforce.
What's your message to small business owners now?
Small business owners need to contact every single legislator who voted no on the Appropriations Committee to let them know that they have failed the business community. A lot of folks on the Appropriations Committee brag about how they call themselves small business champions, but really what happened last night was putting politics over good policy.
And what are the next steps?
CBIA will always continue to support solutions that drive down costs for small businesses. There is a bill out there that would create a tax credit for small businesses who offer an ICRA, and that bill really moves the needle, but it wouldn't be as revolutionary as legalizing association health plans.
Thanks, Grace. We are getting a look at how Connecticut's economy is holding up. In the last week, the Connecticut Department of Labor released its January jobs report showing Connecticut employers added 5,300 jobs to start 2026. Just a few days later, we got a new GDP report that shows Connecticut's economy expanded 2.4% in 2025, 12th fastest in the country. CBIA Foundation Director Dustin Nord is back with us to help us break down the numbers. Dustin, welcome back to the BizCast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this was kind of nice to get a pretty good data dump, and we're going to get another one in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We got it all kind of at once. We've had a delay for a while now, but we finally got our January jobs report and our Q4 and 2025 GDP report last week. So very exciting.
What's your takeaway?
I think 2025, generally speaking, was somewhat solid, especially considering a lot of the uncertainty in the economy. We added almost 5,500 jobs for the year over year between January. And if we look at GDP, we had a strong year, I should say. We're one of the top growing states in the country, I think number 12 overall for 2025 compared to 2024. So that's definitely a good thing to see.
Was there anything about the jobs data that specifically stood out to you?
For the last year, I think one of the things that stood out was it was a tough year for manufacturing, which we thought might be the case, especially with tariffs, declined about 1.4%, which was more than the nation overall, which is definitely a concern. But we had strong growth in places like healthcare, which continued to see a lot of employment growth. We saw good construction numbers, which is always a positive thing to see for the jobs numbers overall. That means solid investment in the state. So I think for that jobs report, those are the bright sides, but I'd say definitely manufacturing and the overall stagnation that we saw in finance and insurance, which is one of our most important sectors. Those are two concerns that stand out for 2025.
So we have seen some kind of differences in the payrolls with the jobs numbers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we measure two different things when it comes to jobs. We measure payrolls, which is asking employers how many jobs that they're hiring for essentially and how many people they're bringing on. And then we have employment, which is asking households whether or not they're employed. So that second number captures people who are self-employed. They might be working like gig work or something like that. It might be individuals who are they're working, but not necessarily for an employer. That number has been declining over the last year, as has the overall labor force. So despite the fact that we've seen good payroll growth, that's definitely something to be concerned with. That could mean that you have individuals that are working more than one job. That could mean that you have more people that are exiting the labor force overall, just completely. So there's definitely something to be concerned with, that even though we've had strong payroll growth and good demand from employers, that we've seen this decline in overall employment.
Pivoting back to GDP, what are some of the sectors that we should be watching closely after this year's report?
Yeah, I think across the board, we had solid growth in almost every single industry in the state in 2025, which is good news. Manufacturing was one place that stood out, that even though we had that weakness in terms of payrolls, that we continue to see growth, especially in places like durable goods manufacturing. That's our aerospace manufacturers in Connecticut for the most part.
And what is the difference in terms of how Connecticut's manufacturing is doing compared to the U.S. as a whole?
We've definitely had a harder time in terms of employment. So employment is down compared to the nation overall. But we saw the growth that we saw in GDP in terms of total output was very comparable, strong compared to the United States. So that's a positive. That means that we're still investing heavily in manufacturing. That means that, the workers that are there are potentially getting more hours, for example, that we're utilizing those employees more effectively or more so in the industry as a whole. So I think that's a positive sign. And hopefully looking ahead, as manufacturers have been able to adapt to tariffs and new federal policy, we'll continue to see that growth. And I think that's the hope.
As we kind of take a step back, look at the past couple of years, what do you think the trajectory is?
It's definitely positive right now. It's still worth noting that over the last 5 years, Connecticut has been 41st in terms of overall growth. So while we had a really good 2025, that is coming on the heels of pretty weak, tepid growth in the previous years before that, especially right out of the pandemic. We saw pretty weak growth. And so when we're looking ahead, I think we're hoping to keep the momentum that we had this year going. A lot of that's going to come down to, can we continue to grow our labor force in order to fill jobs? Can we maintain an economy that encourages investment like we've been able to for the last year?
What kind of recommendations is the foundation made to, as we kind of look at these job numbers and what Connecticut needs to do?
We just released our workforce and education blueprint just a couple weeks ago now. A lot of that focused on how do we better invest in our high school graduates to make sure that they're better prepared coming out of high school to go into some of these high demand fields, especially places like manufacturing and healthcare. We want to continue to support policy that allows greater training opportunities for folks. And again, trying to improve affordability to reduce the cost of living in the state relative to the nation so that we can continue to retain our workers and not lose them to other places. Especially in an environment where immigration is down over the last year. We rely heavily on that. We need ways to encourage greater degree of domestic migration to the state.
And Dustin, on that workforce report, you guys recently released at the Workforce Summit that CBIA does in partnership with the Office of Workforce Strategy. You spoke on a panel with the former Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Also, we're joined by Willie Barber from Electric Boat and Economic Leadership's Saunders. Can you tell me a little bit more about the blueprint? And we'll hear from some of that panel in a minute.
Yeah, so the blueprint was looking at grades 9 through 12, looking at the opportunities to continue to improve the workforce development system within that space to help make sure our students have the best opportunities possible to be engaged in different industries and to learn and ultimately have opportunities straight out of high school. To be on stage with those three was definitely an honor and a pleasure. And I think what we took away was that there's a lot of room and a lot of opportunity on the backs of the hard work of so many people that are working towards this. There's no shortage of effort that's happening in the space. Now it's just trying to bring it all together into a more coherent system.
All right. Thanks, Dustin. Let's get to that conversation right now.
Workforce development is at the top of everybody's minds. And Connecticut has an aging workforce. We have a stagnant population. It's a system that needs support in order to be competitive in the future. How important is the high school ecosystem to the broader workforce picture as we're looking to the future?
Look, I was a graduate of Wilcox Technical High School where I learned how to fix cars for 4 years. Shout out C-Techs. And there I learned how to work with people that were different than me. There I learned how to do work-based learning. And those skills prepared me when I became a teacher. So I think it's critical that we not only take advantage of the great programming that our technical high schools have, but that we make sure that all of our comprehensive high schools in Connecticut offer students similar options, similar pathways to college and career, and making sure that it's not relegated to just a portion of our schools.
Willie, for Electric Boat, you obviously have thousands of jobs that you're trying to fill across many different types of skills. But from your perspective, working with education and, how important is the high school aspect of that training regime to your success as a business?
I would say our high schools are a renewable resource, right? So every year you're getting a new crop of students that you can educate. High schools are also this focal point, right? Where parents, teachers, the community come together, right? So when we work with high schools, we're really getting not just to the students, but to the parents, to the aunts, to the uncles, to the generations, right? So when we work with these students, it's really important to share and expose them to these opportunities.
Everybody on this stage has experience working across states. I think Connecticut, sometimes we can get in our own world and we only focus on what we're doing. What is the biggest difference between Connecticut and the other states you're working, that you've worked with, and how do you think about that as you're implementing your own solutions for the state?
Really that segmentation that comes with being 169 towns and all the different school districts, and I think that adds a level of complexity for this state. People on the outside, when they're looking in at these programs, and they're not seeing those towns or those school district lines. So I just, as we think about solutions throughout the day, and I think a lot of the breakout sessions this afternoon will have some of this great back and forth on conversations on this, is just because one town over has a program doesn't mean you need to invent another program. It's more about how can we align regionally or in this part of the state to come up with a better solution for all the students in the area.
When I'm in Connecticut, it's definitely working in a bunch of different little universes, right? Each town is its own universe, each system is its own product. So it's really, really unique when you go over to the other side of the area, over to Rhode Island, which is not too far. So that is something that I feel like when we're looking at Connecticut, we have the resources, we have innovators, we have great systems. We just need to wrap it around and make it a little more organized.
I think that's a great point. I think one of the challenges we always have in Connecticut is that regionalism is a dirty word for a lot of people. And doing regional services or shared services is often a challenge politically to make that happen. But does anybody have a good example? I think that was a great example you just shared, Willie, but Kat or Miguel, of things that you think, looking at Connecticut, that you think are opportunities in terms of acting more regionally, acting at a larger scale.
We've seen across the country models that work. It's just not sustainable to expect every small district in Connecticut to have the same resources to provide the same opportunities. So we have to think, across district lines as well, and we have to make sure that students across the country, across the state, have the same opportunities by thinking regionally. So, to me, it's just really about organizing, as was said a minute ago. And as you said earlier, we have examples in the state of Connecticut that I would lift up as exemplars across the country. What happens is, in many cases, we have pockets of excellence. We need to rely on systems, not superheroes.
And I think part of that is being able to show success and also the ability to have the resources available at your disposal. I think Electric Boat is often held up as an example of someone as a company that's able to do that. But I think one of the challenges to that is always, you're hiring 8,000 people. That's a lot. You have a lot of scale in order to make this work. That's something we heard across our panels and across our roundtables is the challenge for small and medium-sized businesses to access this rather than the big companies like Electric Boat.
What I have learned in this journey for the past 5 to 7 years is that every district has that champion that really wants to own that partnership for industry, and that will shout it to the rooftops to the right person. It does not matter if they're a superintendent. It does not matter if they're a guidance counselor. It does not matter if they're the welding teacher. Focus on that one school and find that right person that will get things done, that will work hand in hand, almost like that is a partner. As long as a small to medium-sized business can have that direct line, that champion, right, that is something that is going to reshape that business and overall Connecticut's economy.
How have then maybe other states been able to scale that up? I think about people like Delaware or Tennessee or some of these other places that have been able to then take, the learnings of a large company like EB and then be able to support the broader system. Do you have any good examples?
When I'm talking to you all, I'm thinking of this with transformational economic development lens here of how can we really impact the vitality of the state overall with these pieces we're discussing today. And I think those things are stability and predictability. And when you think about navigating a workforce system in a state and you're new to the state, you're not even sure how to navigate this workforce system. There's not the same, person in every part of the state. To me, that is unpredictable and it's not stable because I can't scale my business the way I want to because it's going to be different than when I do it here than when I do it there. Yep. And to me, that is lack of speed, it's higher cost, it's going to take me more time, and it would probably be easier to do it in another state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kat, I love the way you said that because it's true. You can't have random acts of pathways and expect that you're going to have a viability in your state. And the last thing you said, I want to double down on that. Businesses will go to states that are doing it. A strong education system is your best economic lever in this state. And I really feel I've seen it in other states. And I think that's possible for Connecticut this upcoming year. Across the country, in many parts, college has become a very expensive career exploration program. Let's face it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have to do better. We have to do better. Our students deserve better. Our families deserve better.
I used to be an educator. I used to teach in New London public schools. One of my past students, the school system really kind of gave up on him because he was that kid that regular school didn't work for. But clearly he had a talent. He's only been in the company for 2 years. He told me he's already a pipe welder. For those that don't know, pipe welders, they are a premium trade at Electric Boat. He had a talent, and if I didn't have that moment that could tell him EB is for him, then he would have been, still telling at Ocean Beach, right? How many kids are like Jay that have lost this opportunity and did not know about this? So I just wanted to say, for an economic engine to happen here in this state, we need the front line to be equipped with the awareness of these careers.
We also need to remember that if our schools are only rewarded on college entry, if they're only awarded on that, or they're judged on that, or given additional budget resources because of how many kids they're cranking out to go to four-year universities, it's not going to get fixed. If you allow yourself more flexibility in this state, it actually will set you up to have some more of these pathways be more successful. But teachers need to be empowered to help steer kids in that direction. And right now, there are some challenges with that.
I feel very optimistic about this. I'm looking around the room. I see Christine Carver there, superintendent. I see Maduko, who's floating around. Shannon Merriman. We have all the ingredients. I feel very optimistic about this, and I feel that we have an opportunity. I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as an opportunity to come together. I see, boards of education. CABE is here. How important is it for our Connecticut boards of education to be a part of this process? And they're willing. And my experience has told me that when you put folks in a room together with a shared goal, and students are at the center of that, good things happen in Connecticut. So I really feel optimistic about the opportunity we have ahead of us.
Before we close out our episode, we want to share an update on an important bill impacting small businesses. A key provision of Governor Ned Lavant's budget proposal, expanding the state's research and development tax credit to pass-through entities.
Innovation isn't just part of our strategy, it's essential for our survival and growth.
Lamont joined DECD Commissioner Dan O'Keefe, CBIA President and CEO Christy Pentima, and Burke Aerospace President and CEO Brittany Isherwood at the company's Farmington facility to highlight the proposal.
R&D takes a little while. You don't get immediate cash flow back on it. So anything you do to help a smaller company that's really focused on cash flow, make a difference, that's what we do.
If approved, pass-through entities will be able to claim a 6% tax credit for qualifying R&D expenditures.
Extending this the way the governor has proposed will allow many of those most innovative companies to take advantage of it.
The goal is to make it easier for small businesses like Burke to invest in innovation and their workforces.
These incentives directly influence decisions about where we expand, where we hire, and how we invest in next generation capabilities.
You want to know where job growth is? You want to know where innovation is? There's companies right like this at Burke Aerospace.
We are the fourth fastest growing economy in the country. The largest contributor to our growth is the manufacturing sector,
where many of our manufacturers have locations in other states and have choice. If we want companies to invent, build, and scale here in Connecticut, we need to support how our businesses operate.
Strengthening and maintaining these programs signals that Connecticut is committed to supporting small businesses across the state and growing advanced manufacturing, the future of aerospace.
And anything we can do to help generate more small business entrepreneurship and growth, that's what this means, helping companies like this grow and get the next generation of jobs, and so you can double in size, and that's what we're here to cheer on today.
That's a wrap on this week's BizCast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. In the meantime, give us your feedback and let us know if there are any guests you'd like to hear from by emailing us at bizcast@cbia.com. And remember, you can listen, like, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For a full list of episodes, head to cbia.com.